I would never defend my country again if that happened to me. F these bitches. They don't deserve it. What the hell?
Today, we're going over the most epic deaths in human history. Number 1, Benkei. We're starting this video off with a story of the greatest wingman in human history. It's a dark night in 12th century Japan, and a Buddhist monk named Benkei is wandering the streets of Kyoto. With an abundance of temples dotting the city, monks are a common sight, but this guy is different. At 6'6", he towers over everyone around him, and he's carrying a weapon. A cross between a sword and a long spear called a naginata. His face gives off the vibes of someone on a hunt more than someone seeking enlightenment. And it turns out he was out hunting that night for his final victim. See, Benkei was actually a Sohei, a warrior monk trained and battle-hardened in combat. Through his encounters with samurai, he's decided that they were an arrogant class, unworthy of their status in society. The world would be a better place with less of them around, and this led him on a bloody quest to duel and defeat 1,000 samurai, collecting their blades as trophies after each victory.
Yo, man just set his own quests. He was like, you know what? If I killed 1,000 of these guys and then collected their weapons as loot, that would be pretty neat. This guy invented gaming for real.
At this point, he had collected 999 swords.
Dude!
And was out that night,
Is that legal? Was murdering people just legal? 900 guys? He killed 900 people and that was okay? That was fine? Nobody said anything? He didn't get arrested?
looking for his final duel. While walking near Goto Tenjin Shrine, Benkei hears the sound of a flute, and when looking to see who is playing it, he finds a small, thin samurai. Around the man's waist is a beautiful gilded katana, the perfect piece to finalize Benkei's sword collection. He immediately challenges this samurai to a duel. The small man puts away his flute, and surprisingly, he agrees to fight. The two men...
Oh, so okay, he killed all of these guys in duels, which I guess is a legal way to do it.
Walk together to Gojo Bridge and draw their weapons. Full of confidence, Benkei rushes in, but despite towering over the samurai, Benkei is swiftly defeated. Instead of taking his life, the samurai just turns and walks away. Benkei is shocked and left in disbelief. In the following days, these unfamiliar feelings turn to anger and frustration. How could he lose to this tiny samurai? He had defeated much larger men in the past. He decides to stalk the grounds of Kiyomizu-dera Temple, waiting for the samurai to appear so he could take his revenge. Eventually, the samurai does show up, and Benkei immediately challenges him to another duel, a fight that Benkei loses again. Humiliated, he bows in defeat and tells this samurai that he'll abandon his life as a monk and instead follow him as one of his retainers.
Hey! Well, you know what? I like that. You realize that you're weak and you meet someone so much stronger than you, and instead of like going mad with anger, you want to learn from them? That's cool.
The samurai, who turns out to be Minamoto no Yoshitsune of the legendary Minamoto clan, agrees. Benkei joins him on his adventures, and the two become inseparable. They go on to join Yoshitsune's half-brothers and fight in the Genpei War against the powerful Taira, a clan that had killed Yoshitsune's father when he was just a baby. After 5 years of fighting, the Minamoto clan emerges victorious, and one of Yoshitsune's half-brothers, Yoritomo, becomes shogun. The end of the Genpei War had an unintended consequence. Without a common enemy, jealousy and suspicion soon turn the brothers against each other, and Yoshitsune and Benkei find themselves on the run, being pursued by Yoritomo and his men. They eventually find protection under another clan called the Fujiwara, and the pair spend a few years in relative peace in their domain. This ultimately did not last, as with a lot of pressure and probably a lot of bribes, Yoritomo finally convinces the Fujiwara to turn on his brother. Fujiwara no Hidehira, the man who was once their protector, betrays them, and on June 15th, 1189, at the Battle of Koromogawa, Yoshitsune and Benkei find themselves trapped and outnumbered 5-1, with 500 of Fujiwara's men surrounding their castle position.
Dude, 500?
The forces clash, and Yoshitsune's men put up a heroic effort. Benkei in particular is a demon on the battlefield, crushing enemies who are on average more than a foot shorter than him. But despite their best efforts, Yoshitsune's men quickly begin to fall. With just a handful of retainers remaining, Yoshitsune realizes the battle is already lost. He turns to Benkei and tells him he plans to commit seppuku within the castle. He'll need time to prepare, and Benkei understands the assignment. He walks to the bridge that serves as the only entrance to the castle and stands alone against Fujiwara's army. Fujiwara signals a charge, and wave after wave of his men charge Benkei. He cuts them down one after another. No man can make it past him. In some stories, he's said to have single-handedly slain 300 soldiers on that bridge.
Wait, that's like more than half of the ones that were surrounding that castle. That would be crazy if that was true.
Benkei stands stoically behind a pile of deceased Fujiwara warriors, beckoning more men to cross. And despite orders to do so, none of the Fujiwara's men answer his call.
Valid and understandable. If you see a beast like that guy just murder guy after guy after guy, allegedly 300 of them, I'd be abandoning my title. I'd be abandoning my job, which is not very honorable. But obviously, I don't have a strong honor mindset, so yeah.
They all know that stepping on the bridge was a death sentence. Fujiwara, realizing his men are now too afraid to attack Benkei head-on, calls in his archers. They'll take him out from a distance instead.
Smart.
The archers let loose a barrage of arrows that find their mark in Benkei's chest, but nothing happens. Benkei doesn't flinch. They let loose another volley of arrows, but still nothing changes. Benkei's body is now a pincushion of arrows, but is still standing defiantly in their way. Time passes, and both sides stare at each other across the bridge. Nobody dares to make the first move. Finally, Fujiwara orders some of his men onto the bridge, and they reluctantly do as they're told. As they slowly approach Benkei, he makes no motion to ready himself. They creep closer, and when they finally reach the massive monk, they discover that while he was still standing, he was already dead. Benkei, knowing he needed to buy as much time for his master as possible, had positioned himself to be supported by his spear even if he was no longer alive.
Wow.
In his last stand, he showed no pain or emotion while being hit with countless arrows, all to give the illusion that he was ready to fight anyone who dared to cross. Because of his final actions, Yoshitsune had enough time to commit the seppuku ritual properly, maintaining his honor. What a wingman!
That is crazy. Benkei is the best friend that we all need in life. But we should also not forget to be the best friend in return.
Number 2. Yi Sun-sin. The end of the 16th century in Korea was a strange mix of insane political corruption and relative peace for its people. Korea was a loyal tribute state to China, and the Ming dynasty pretty much left them alone. To the east, the Japanese were busy killing each other in the Sengoku Jidai, so they weren't a problem either. Aside from those pesky Jurchens who were constantly invading from the north, the rest of Korea was pretty boring and uneventful with no major threats. The boring, no-wars way of life led to many men choosing to pursue careers as scholars and government officials, as it was now the best way to gain power and influence. This led to a bloated and corrupt political class and an extremely weak military led by generals who had never seen real combat. This combination of governmental corruption and a weak military would end up causing all kinds of problems in 1590 when Hideyoshi Toyotomi fulfilled the dreams of his former lord Oda Nobunaga and reunified Japan, bringing an end to the Sengoku Jidai. The Japanese, for the first time in over 100 years, were not at war with each other. And if they weren't busy fighting each other, who are they gonna fight now? Oh. Hey, before you brutally invade Korea and stuff, can I ask you, how many spam emails or texts do you get a day?
I'm a Mongolian prince with 10 million to send to you. Cure your foot fungus today. I know your password is I am better than Oda. Hi Hideyoshi, so you want to be less ugly? We have a deal for you!
I think you need to check out Incogni.
Here you go, if anyone wants to check out Incogni with Serious History's code, feel free.
You can get back to your invasion now. Toyotomi begins sending messengers to Korea, saying that he was planning to conquer China and that he expects the Koreans to help him or else. Now remember, Korea was basically like the Puerto Rico of China in this era, so they couldn't really help Japan conquer it. Not like they wanted to anyway. They thought the Japanese were primitive barbarians.
They were just like, yo, leave us alone please. We don't want nothing to do with this.
Plus, those idiots don't even know how to sail anyway, right? Oh. In 1592, hundreds of Japanese ships are spotted off the coast of Busan. This is no trading expedition, this is an invasion. Seeing the massive Japanese fleet, two of Korea's top admirals freak out and sink their own ships so they won't have to fight the Japanese.
What do you mean? I guess it was that scary.
Just like that, half of Korea's naval fleet is gone. The Japanese soldiers land in Busan unopposed and immediately begin conquering forts and cities on their march to Seoul.
Hi guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you!
The Korean military is no match for Toyotomi's men, who are all veterans of a 100-year war. Korean casualties are huge. The Japanese are ruthless and leave few survivors. Within 3 weeks, they've marched to and conquered Seoul. A few weeks later, they take Pyongyang and are at China's doorstep. The fall of Korea seems inevitable. But when all hope seemed lost, a man determined to defend his homeland and drive out these barbarian invaders rose to the occasion. A man who quite possibly was the greatest admiral to ever live. His name was Yi Sun-sin. So Yi Sun-sin's story is pretty interesting because, unlike most heroes, he wasn't necessarily liked by the elites at the time. In fact, they kind of hated him, but for all the wrong reasons. Basically, early in his military career, he was so good at inspiring his men and leading them to victory that he made everyone around him look bad by comparison. Remember, corruption was a big problem during this time. So out of jealousy, a general falsely accuses Yi of deserting the army in battle, and the king believes it. He strips
his most capable man, and he just believes it?
Yi of his rank, has him thrown in prison and tortured.
Oh my God.
This experience would probably make most men quit the military altogether.
I would never defend my country again if that happened to me. Fuck these bitches, they don't deserve it. What the hell?
But Yi was eventually released, and he managed to climb his way back through the ranks to commanding a small fleet of ships by the start of the Japanese invasion. Now, despite the fact the Koreans were absolute trash at fighting at the start of this war, they did have one huge advantage over the Japanese. They'd been dealing with Woko pirates along the coast for years, and because of this, they had developed ships called Panoksun, and later the turtle ship that were specifically designed to combat Japanese naval tactics. See, the Japanese weren't used to fighting at sea, so they basically stuck to what they were good at, close-range combat. Their strategy consisted of shooting at people with their rifles and boarding other ships, and engaging them with swords and spears. Their ships were more like transport vessels rather than battleships. The Panoksun, on the other hand, was a floating fortress armed with cannons and was built in a way that made boardings impossible. These ships were a huge reason why Admiral Yi was able to have so much of his success, and are basically the only advantage the Koreans have. And they already sank over half of them themselves. Anyways, Admiral Yi was not a coward like the other two admirals, and instead of sinking his ships, he rushed his fleet of 34 ships headfirst towards the Japanese and began attacking them along the coast. His capabilities as a naval commander are obvious right from the start. In just a few weeks, using tactics to bait the Japanese to sail into vulnerable positions, he single-handedly sinks over 200 Japanese ships with no losses of his own.
Damn!
In battle after battle, he is vastly outnumbered, yet sails away victorious every single time. Yi is the sparkling piece of glitter embedded in the turd that is the Korean military, and by the end of the year, he had sunk 350 Japanese ships. Yi's efforts, along with the help of Chinese reinforcements, allowed the Koreans to drive the Japanese soldiers all the way back to Busan, and by the end of the year, the war entered somewhat of a stalemate, with the Chinese and Japanese trying to negotiate a peace deal. So things are going pretty good for Yi, but remember the two admirals who sunk their own ships at the beginning of the war? Well, one of them, named Won Gyeon, is insanely jealous of Yi.
Wait, I thought they sunk the ships and died. But they sunk the ships and survived. I thought they were so scared of fighting that they were like, yo, I choose death, you know, but apparently they didn't.
Success. So jealous, he starts talking shit about Yi to the king every day.
Dude.
And when peace talks with China fail and Toyotomi begins a second invasion of Korea in 1597, Gyeon and other government officials frame Admiral Yi as a traitor, and the king agrees.
The king is a freaking moron! The king's a moron! I'm mad on this guy's behalf. This is fucking terrible.
The second time in his career,
they don't deserve him.
Yi is stripped of his rank and sent back to prison where he is brutally tortured again.
Dude!
He's set to be executed, but the king has a change of heart.
For
and
what?
He instead sends Yi back to fight as a common soldier. A humiliation worse than death. With Yi out of the picture, Won Gyeon is put in charge of the Korean fleet.
I just don't get it. The king was like, oh yeah, this guy sunk his own ship. Let me believe him and punish the guy who's been carrying this war. Like, what do you mean?
And as you may have guessed by now, he was pretty terrible at his job. He drank heavily, made poor decisions, and disrespected his men. Many of Yi's commanders refused to fight under such a downgrade.
Valid.
And what made things even worse for Gyeon was that during the stalemate, the Japanese who had watched Admiral Yi wreck their over and over again had actually learned how to fight at sea. Their new ships now had cannons, and they began to use the same strategies Admiral Yi had used against them. This all comes to a head in the Battle of Chilcheoliang, Gyeon's first attempt to attack the Japanese fleet. With 200 ships and the best of Admiral Yi's men, Gyeon sails out to confront the Japanese, and he immediately falls into a trap. A trap they had learned from fighting against Yi. The entire Korean Navy is decimated, and Gyun is last seen being chopped to bits by Japanese soldiers while trying to run away.
Deserved.
The king, realizing he may have messed up, reinstates
Oh.
Yi Sun-sin as
Now you real. I'm sorry, I'm so mad at that king. That king's a moron.
fleet admiral, and he takes command of the pathetic remains of the once undefeated Korean Navy. He's left with just 13 ships and a few hundred demoralized men. In the following battle, outnumbered 25-1, using superior strategy, Yi manages to sink 31 of the 333 Japanese ships, again without losing a single ship of his own. This victory gives Yi time to rebuild his navy, but not gonna lie, things still look pretty grim for the Koreans. But the next year, Hideyoshi Toyotomi becomes ill and dies, his last official order being to withdraw the Japanese army from Korea back to Japan. Yi sees this as the time to finally drive the Japanese out of Korea for good and mounts a final offensive against the retreating Japanese forces. At the decisive Battle of Noryang, Yi takes his position at the top of his flagship with his son and nephew and begins beating a war drum to push his allied Korean and Chinese fleet forward. Admiral Yi's ship leads the charge, and he personally takes out 10 Japanese ships. The Japanese are in full retreat, and Yi beats his drum with intensity. Victory is within his grasp. After 7 long years, Korea will finally be free of these invaders. But suddenly, he's hit in his armpit by a Japanese musket ball.
No.
He realizes the wound is fatal, and he turns to his son and nephew and says, "The war is at its height. Wear my armor and beat my war drums. Do not announce my death." His son and nephew quickly carry his body below deck, and his nephew, dressed in Yi's armor, quickly returns to the admiral's position and resumes beating the drum. Yi's men continue to fight, and the Koreans drive the Japanese out of Korea for good. Undefeated in battle, Yi dies below deck, listening to the sound of his drum, knowing that his homeland was finally free.
What a freaking legend, dude. Fuck that king. Screw that stupid king he was under.
3. Ben L. Salomon. So we generally cover stories from more ancient times on this channel, but this story from World War II undeniably belongs on this list. This is the last stand of a dentist turned field medic who took out 98 Japanese soldiers before falling to his own wounds. Ben L. Salomon was drafted into the United States Army in 1940, just 3 years after he graduated from the USC Dental School.
Damn.
Salomon proved to be a model soldier and showed himself to be very skilled with both rifle and pistol. He was quickly promoted, first to lieutenant and then to captain in 1944, serving as a regimental dental officer of the 105th Infantry Regiment. In June of 1944, Salomon and the 105th were deployed into active combat in Saipan. The fighting in the Pacific was infamously bloody. Casualties on the island were extremely high, and with so many soldiers having much more pressing issues than a root canal, Salomon volunteered to replace the 2nd Battalion's field surgeon who had been wounded. By July, both the Americans and the Japanese had suffered heavy casualties, and the remaining Japanese troops on the island came to the realization that there was no path to victory. They decided on a final banzai charge, a mission with the sole goal of killing as many American soldiers as possible with no plan of returning. Early in the morning of July 7th, 1944, the remaining 4,000 Japanese soldiers began their final attack. Salomon's field tent was positioned just 50 yards behind the front foxholes, and within minutes, his tent quickly filled with over 30 injured troops. He did his best to tend to the wounded, but the Japanese soon broke through the front lines. He looked out of his tent and spotted a Japanese soldier bayoneting a wounded American who was lying outside of the tent. Enraged, Salomon picked up the rifle of one of his patients and fired at the Japanese soldier, killing him. Suddenly, 2 more Japanese soldiers popped into Salomon's tent and he fired on them, taking them out as well. Like zombies, 4 more enemy soldiers then crawled into the tent from the sides.
This sounds like one of those video games where you need to defend your position.
And Salomon took 2 out with his rifle and another with his bayonet. He hit the 4th soldier in the stomach with the butt of his gun, and a wounded soldier he had been treating finished him off. Realizing the situation was only getting worse, Salomon instructed his medics to evacuate all of the wounded men. He would stay behind to give them cover so they could retreat. Salomon grabbed a rifle and joined the front lines. When he saw 4 men manning a machine gun fall to enemy fire, he rushed to the gun and manned it himself. Fire burst into the charging Japanese soldiers. He continued to fight from that position until he was eventually overrun by enemy soldiers. Days later, when the Americans returned to the battlefield, Salomon's body was found slumped over the machine gun, with 98 dead Japanese soldiers piled in front of him. His body was ravaged with 76 bullet holes and many bayonet wounds, 24 of which he may have suffered before actually dying. The blood trail on the ground showed that Salomon had repositioned the machine gun multiple times while mortally wounded. Despite saving many lives that day, Salomon was denied the Medal of Honor due to a rule in the Geneva Convention that no medical officer can bear arms against an enemy. Despite multiple recommendations from generals throughout the years, he remained a footnote in history until 2002, when Salomon was finally posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor from President George W. Bush, 58 years later.
Man, war sounds rough. I'm glad he at least got the medal in the end.